Welcome to the Soul Centered Attorney Podcast, where we go over the good, the bad, and the ugly about running or starting and running your own law firm in the age of AI. I am your host, Fabian Valencia, and for our very first episode, we have a special guest, Eric Fong. He is the owner and founder of Fong Law. He practices civil rights and criminal defense. He holds many records, but one example is a record-setting verdict in Washington State for $91 million. And these records really speak to the level of care that he puts into achieving full justice for his clients at trial. He is a teacher of trial lawyers across the country. He serves many roles where he gives back to the profession and to our community. I really hope that you enjoy, as much as I did, the conversation with Eric Fong. Eric Fong, how are you, man?
Little under the weather. Uh, been traveling a lot. But spring is here and toiling the earth and doing pretty good.
Nice. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, thank you for agreeing to have this conversation and despite being a little bit under the weather. I think it's gonna be fun, man. So we're here for the good, the bad, and the ugly about being a solo attorney. Um,
Yeah, I can talk about that.
so we'll just start from the beginning, man. How did you decide to become an attorney?
Ooh, how did I decide to become a lawyer? Um, I never wanted to be a lawyer. It kind of found me. Um, I just kept going to school because my dad was a college professor, and that was a very structured and disciplined upbringing. So, um, college graduation wasn't a big thing because I knew I was going to graduate from some higher degree, and I went to law school because my major was sociology. I didn't take school that seriously, and so I went to law school and wasn't a great student, but I did pass the bar and got a job as a public defender and just instantly fell in love with the courtroom. Loved it.
Hmm.
So it really did find me. I had truly had no intentions of being a lawyer at all.
Wow, that's refreshing, man. I have a very similar. Um, yeah, I just was trying to stay in school, and it just kind of it just kind of clicked after once I got into the courtroom myself.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't think we're alone. I think a lot of people, so many people are going to law school and what have you. And I wonder how many of them are like us, where they're just kind of buying time because you're so young, or at least I was. When I went to school, I was just God, young 20s. I was 23 when I started law school, right? You don't know what you want to do in life then. I think most people don't.
Yeah, yeah. And then so public defender. So how yeah, can you take us through, what kind of uh lawyer work you did before starting as a solo?
Yeah, so I was hired by a guy by the name of David Rovang, and this was 1996. And this was before there were limits on the number of cases you could do. So private firms in smaller counties here in Washington State, they didn't have a public defense agency. So lawyers would bid on contracts with cities or counties, and you would just become the public defender. So we did much of the public defense in Kitsap County, the city of Bremerton, the city of Paulsbo, Port Orchard, and felony contract. And then at some point, eventually, from the CGA doing federal public defense work. And so I've done it all, for 11 years. That was kind of the primary practice I had, along with a general mix of everything, but primarily personal injury.
Got it. And uh were you how long were you public defender?
Um, 11 years. You know, I was 11 years in a firm that my primary responsibility was public defense. And it was, when I say a firm, it was me, David Rovang, and maybe we had two associates. So it was a very small firm. And this idea of, and I've also been a partner in a large national firm, and I have struggled mightily throughout my career of, how do I want to practice law? Because as a solo practitioner, um, I struggled with the loneliness of it, the creativity of working with other people, the camaraderie ship. Uh, Working with other people has its own host of problems, where it can really blow up on you if it's not a good relationship. So it's a tricky balance, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, man. So, yeah, so then you were in that first firm for 11 years and then a bigger firm, it sounds like. So how did it,
Yeah. I
when,
mean, it's not exactly like that. I think that let's see here. I don't know the exact timeline, but I would say at about 15 years, I decided to become a solo practitioner. I wasn't satisfied with um, the partnership that I had with Rovan. The public defense stuff was wearing me out. It's the work I'm most proud of, but I I had to quit doing it because you're so underappreciated by your clients. First of all, you pour your heart and soul into this work, and your clients are suspicious of you. You're a public pretender. Um, the pay is terrible.
Mm,
It's criminal. I mean, we're going up against prosecutors who have full benefits, lots of resources available to them, have a much easier job, and you make a fraction of what they make. And so I just didn't want to have that kind of practice anymore. And so I kind of became a solo practitioner then. And then I did that for, I don't know, about 5 years probably. And uh, had a lot of different opportunities to work with some of the best lawyers in the country. Nick Rowley, Rick Friedman. But I wasn't ready for that. I was dealing with some personal issues. I knew that where my mind was at, that I could never, I could fake it for a little bit, but I wasn't ready to make those kinds of commitments. And so that never materialized. So I kind of just hacked away as a solo practitioner. And eventually it's like, I should have maybe followed up on some of those other opportunities because I missed the creativity that I mentioned earlier. I think that two minds, if you a good relationship, two minds working together is greater than the sum of two. Like two people collaborating is far greater than their minds adding up individually to two. One mind operating on itself is less than one. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Because we don't know our faults, and we don't have, we got to bounce ideas off other people to let the imagination grow, and to increase our vision. And so I really crave that the relationships and company of other people. So that's when I went and reached and partnered up with some friends that ran a much larger firm, and that wasn't for me.
Uh, and then that brought you to where you are now?
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And that let's see here. So that relationship, I left that firm in 2019, I think. So I've been a solo. I've had an associate through some of this run, but I've settled on just being a solo practitioner, and that's the way where I'm at in this journey that I've gone along that I've told you about. Like, I'm very confident with where I am in life and my practice that this is where I want to be.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's double click on I think one thing that was very powerful that struck a chord with me right now was the creativity that comes from, two minds working together. Um, and
Yeah.
I used to take pride in being the lone wolf and going
Yeah.
into the courtroom by myself. But last year I got to do a trial with my sister, and it was night and day as far as just how, the how we creativity that came from it. So can you talk about that? Like, when did you first
Yeah.
discover
Well,
how you
yeah.
approach it?
Well, first of all, the workload and people's skill sets. I don't really believe that. I think you could be a really above average motions lawyer, discovery kind of detail oriented person, and an above average trial lawyer. And I know you can do all those things at once, but I don't think that. And so this is kind of varying a little bit about off of the creativity part, but it also isn't, because we have to recognize our limitations. Like there's certain things I'm just not good at. And writing, like responding to a motion for summary judgment, I would be less than a law student in my ability to do that. Who's like a law student who loves writing, is great at legal research and good legal analysis. That's not my deal. Um, and so that's one area where I think working with other people is really important. So as a solo practitioner, I generally will ask other lawyers to team up on my cases. And I think that I've been doing this a long time, and people might think, well, why you don't need to do that? Why would you give up half of your fee, on a huge case, and you could do it and you've done it your whole career? Well, it's because I'm going to be happier not having to do all that drudgery work that I don't know how to do and hate. And there's people who love to do it. And so why don't we do it together and work less and help the client more? Right. And so as a solo practitioner, knowing to ask for help is, I think, really important. And then the other part of that is I'm lucky enough where I get brought in on cases, right? And so I can be selective, and I can work with lawyers that way, where they bring me in on cases, they continue to work it up, but my responsibility would be the person who manages the stuff in the courtroom and the trial work. Um, and and I just have to say that this idea of creativity and working together with people is really important. And I didn't really answer your question, but I think we could go more into that.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah. So one of the challenges that I've had in, finding the right people to team up with is, making sure, like you said, that our skill sets complement each other, and then just making sure that it's going to be, a good working relationship. How do, like, before, I know now you have, the credentials and the experience to have people, bring you in. But before, like when you first started collaborating, how did you how did you start that conversation about teaming up? How did you make sure that it was that, the intentions were there?
Yeah, I look, it's one of the most frustrating experiences I have. So as much as I crave it, it's also one of the things that causes me some of the most, pain or heartache or frustrations in my day, is that it's hit or miss. Who you decide to work with, or how that works, it's never going to be perfect. And I think that the ability to recognize that and not get too bent out of shape when it falls apart or mistakes are going on is really important. Um, but how to pick, who to work with, uh, look, either the case excites you or it doesn't. I think the case should decide whether you work with another lawyer or not. So if it's your case and you're going to ask someone to come in on it, I think obviously, hopefully it's a case that would excite the interest of someone who wants to get in. Otherwise, you're just going to have to do it on your own, right? But if you have that case that will generate excitement and interest from lawyers that can help you, you should be in the driver's seat to research, talk to, and maybe vet the lawyers that might be a good fit for you.
Mm.
If someone's asking you to help them, either the case is something you want to do or not. And then you better hope that it doesn't turn into a disaster because you really don't know people that well. You might know them personally, but if you've never worked with them before, you have no idea. They might have all the credentials in the world, and you're like, how is it possible? They may have zero credentials and be some of the most put together, competent, thorough lawyers you've ever met.
Yeah. And besides teaming up with attorneys, like how do you approach teaming up with other professionals like we both worked with psychodramatists and uh and how do you think about those type of professionals and do you use them like in the courtroom or is it more like preparation?
That's what I think for that. There's two things that are going on. One is the search for knowledge and learning. Uh, the other part is sometimes it's necessary to properly work up a case, right? And and when we're going down a search for knowledge that will help improve us as a person, which necessarily means it'll improve us as a lawyer. Um, I personally have chosen. I think you're big on soul-centered law, and I love that because my personal journey has been the inward journey of understanding who I am and what kind of moves me to inspirations and feelings and expressions so that I can tap into other people's movements, feelings, and inspirations, right? Because until you're stable yourself and you really understand what moves you, how are you supposed to motivate other people? So that's been a huge part of my seeking help as a lawyer. And it's involved shamans, it's involved, you know, yoga, um, AA, the 12-step journey for me was huge. Reading self-help books, meditation, all of these things. And I've gone deep into all of these to the point of burning out, um, have been huge in counseling, psychodrama, uh, have been huge in helping me express my inner truth as it connects to cases. And when I'm speaking my truth, you're authentic. And that's the most powerful form of communication we're ever going to have. So that's kind of one avenue of seeking help. The other ones are, for example, communication. We need help on how to use our voice. We need help on understanding the legal topics, focus groups, and uh, helping our clients tap into their truth so that they can tell their story, right? There's experts on all of these areas that I have exhaustively used, but it's scary. And I'll tell you why it's scary, because it requires you to take a risk and spend money, right? And a lot of times we make excuses like, I just can't afford to do that. And I've been, I'm a risk taker. I'm a little bit of a gambler. And so I do spend money not knowing if I'll ever get it back. And for me, it's paid off 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. It's seeking, at the end of all of it, it's asking for help and seeking knowledge.
That's even deeper than I was thinking as far as using it for our purposes, just come from the kind of an authentic place. Um, and as far as kind of staying in this vein, do you have like as far as routines, like let's just use like a regular day of trial,
Yeah.
like when trial, there's a lot of things, flying at us. Um, do you have any, like, what does your typical morning look, on the second day of a big trial, as far as
Yeah.
making sure that you're centered despite all the things that everyone's throwing at you?
Well, um, I'm a big, uh, you know, it, the answer to that question kind of varies, honestly, with where I am, because we go in cycles of health. This last trial I did, I don't think I was as healthy as I would have liked to have been. And frankly, my cycle there was I was tired, like because I was working harder than I should. Because if you're scrambling in the middle of trial to get caught up, I think you're a little behind the eight ball. Trial is hard work. It's stressful. We're always going to work long, hard days. But the ideal state of mind in trial, I think, is one where you're relaxed, you're confident, you have a vision of the path you're going to go that day, and frankly, every day thereafter to get to the end. And you're getting to bed early and you're waking up rested and you're stretching, you're doing your exercises, you're having a healthy meal, right? I mean, that's the ideal routine I'd like to be in. And sometimes I'm nailing that and other times I'm not. I always need some time to disconnect and just ground myself from the chatter, right, that's going on in my head from the like I just need a minute to decompress. And that might be in the evening, usually is after a long day, and then get refocused and get back into it. But in my best moments, my routine would be healthy eating, restful night, exercise or stretching or meditation in the morning, going into courtroom confident and relaxed. Now that's like the best possible way.
Yep. And kind of, sticking with the ideal, like, about how many hours of sleep do you shoot for? And, like, do you have a specific stretching routine, or do you kind of freestyle it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on all of those. So first of all, a lot in that question,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot in that question. So sleep, for me, I've come to be comfortable and be willing to. I've been up since 3 in the morning today. Got nothing going on in my life right now. Like I'm as relaxed right now as you could be. And when I woke up at 3, I was like, I'm gonna work on my opening statement for my next trials in July.
Mm.
Right. And so I'm by far the most creative in these crazy hours between 3 and like 6, 7 in the morning. For the past 2 years, before a couple months ago, I was like, I got to sleep more. Like this 5, 6 hours of sleep is not healthy. And every once in a while, I get 7, 8 hours of sleep, never 9. Sometimes, often I'll take a nap. I'm like, I don't want to be like that anymore. I want to sleep 8 hours. And so I got on all sorts of different sleeping pills, tried 3 or 4 different kinds that would allow me to sleep 8 solid hours. And I got there. Like I was sleeping like a baby and then taking a nap. And I'm like, I've never slept more in my life. And dude, I swear I was depressed. There was something like those pills to me are just nasty.
Mm.
Like sleep medication for me, I do not like. And so I quit taking them, and now I'm sleeping, my 6 hours, less some nights, more others, but 6 is I can function on 6, and I'm feeling great. And I'm listening to the muses at 3 in the morning.
Mm.
If they're talking to me, I'm no longer fighting it. I'm embracing it. So that's sleep. And I think I don't know, sleep is a health issue that I think we need to struggle with. Stretching, our health is so important. Healthy body, healthy mind, healthy mind, healthy body. The interrelationships between um, our psychological well-being, our physical well-being, and vice versa, I think are really well connected. And so right now my lower back is bothering me. So I've done enough, I seek physical therapy, even though I don't need it per se, but aches and, like it's just a good physical therapist is money. So I regularly see physical therapists who train me on stretching. You get insurance, you can go 12 times a year. Why wouldn't you go? Um, and so I've got a whole assortment. If my shoulder's bugging me, I've got an assortment of stretches that I know how to do for that. Um, and so someone said to me a while ago, what's the first thing a dog or a cat does when they wake up?
Sure, they stretch.
Yeah, they'll stretch. I'm like, well, if that's what they're doing, I'm going to start doing that. And they were telling me about the importance of stretching. So I stretch, daily. I'll be in the airport and I'll do you know what I mean? Like any chance I get to do some kind of meaningful stretch of some part, like I'm just doing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And as far as like your the first meal, like again on your ideal day before trial, like as far as keep feeling healthy for the day, do you have like specific, or does it vary a lot, or?
Um, my wife is a huge uh part of my life and an incredible cook. And we're right now for the last couple of years, we've started our day off with like this unbelievable shake. It's got kind of like fresh fruits and I don't know what she puts in it, but like some protein powder stuff, other things that supposedly, either improve joints or thinking. I couldn't even tell you what's in it, but it's like awesome. It's so good, and I love fruit. Fruit gives me like a kind of instant pick me up. Um, lunch and afternoons are critical for attention. And so if you're actually in a trial, um, going super light for me is really helpful, but you also need to be tuned into what the jurors are doing, and entertaining them, because those are some of the most dangerous hours to be in trial is the afternoon stretch where people just aren't paying attention and
Mm,
you might be, exhausted and not, you know, concentration, right? Our minds slip. And if we're not at the top of our game, right, physically and emotionally, the ability to stay focused and concentrate, your mind lapses for a second. You're going to lose. You could lose. I mean, look at the basketball games. You can watch an athlete, you can see when they lose their concentration. It's the same thing in court. And so, that we've kind of dovetailed into health, and it's just huge. I'm a former addict. I am an addict, right? There's no such thing as a former. I'm an addict. And um, what I can tell you is lifestyle choices will have a huge determining factor, maybe outcome determinative, power of where you go with your fate and destiny.
mm,
And we got one chance at this shit, one chance.
yeah. 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 Jumping into the jury, you know, part part of us, sometimes complains about how messy a jury is, how unpredictable, how, um, how, it's tough being in front of 12 people that you have no clue what they're thinking. And what, what would be your, how do you, overcome that if,
Yeah. Well, there's a element of powerlessness to it that I find reassuring. There's all sorts of strategies to pack a jury to be favorable to you, right? I mean, there's all sorts of techniques of how you can pick, a jury that's going to give you the best chance. Who's your favorable jurors? What kind of qualities are you looking for? How do you ask the questions that ferret out, the people that you want or don't want? But at the end of all of it, there's this huge unknown thing that's going on there where you just have to have faith. You just have to trust yourself and others and the process. And if nothing else, we're like mirrors. Our souls reflect each other. And if you're carrying that fear and distrust, then they're going to feel it and they're going to give it back at you. And if you've lost your trust and ease and comfort with the jury, and there's a uneasiness and a doubt about who you are or what you're doing, it's mutual. And so you got to really fight that urge to, I'm going to lose, or these people aren't with me, because we're going to feel that all the time, right? But once you start feeding that narrative, you get stronger and stronger. And so it's confidence, man. You have to have confidence.
Hmm. Yeah, dude. So we're definitely you're definitely preaching to the choir with me on this. But I want to talk a little bit more about that. But as far as faith, right? When it comes to being in front of people, and I personally think that our jury system, 12 people, we've been using it for so long, and I tell people a little bit as a joke, but not really, that a group of 12 people is like it's the ancient, most powerful quantum computer we have, because when you get 12 people uh, making a decision, you might not get what you want, but I feel like we always get what the community needs.
I
So
love that. And I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's the greatest look. It's the judiciary check on every other thing in this country, right? It's the judicial process. It's built into the Constitution, and it's the ultimate. Yeah, it's a supercomputer that is gonna work its way out. You have to have faith in the system. You have to believe it works. Otherwise, we just become lawyers that will never do it. And we just settle cases. And we never understand how complicated that process is. And we never learn how to do it. I think the trial lawyer is kind of like a dying breed. I don't know. It's so hard to get cases to go. It's so hard, the number of trials you have to do to really, really understand and kind of get in there and try different things is a lot. You got to try a lot of cases to build a foundation of experience. And you have to believe it works, because if you don't and you just don't use it to your advantage, man, frankly, you're violating the Constitution, right? That's their client's constitutional right.
and I think coming back to your soul, word reflection of the jury, um and just and you also mentioned uh uh being an addict. I'm an addict. I've been really inspired by you, being so open about you know take taking your health back and doing the AA. How can you talk a little bit about that, and how that's kind of shaped your journey?
Yeah, I mean that's a big topic, right? I think that alcohol, weed, cocaine, I don't know, whatever people are using is such a ingrained part of our society. It's just common, it's normal. And I started at a pretty young age. Like sophomore year in high school, I started partying quite a bit and really enjoyed it, loved it, had a love affair with weed and alcohol particularly. And the other part of it was growing up in kind of a scary home. Where there was a lot going on that I wanted to run away from. Almost disassociate from, just black it out. Like, I don't want anything to do with this shit, and I'm going to pretend like it's not there. And so those became my crutch, and it only grew and grew and grew, which is how addiction works. Is it kind of snowballs on you, and then I went through one of the more profound, in a mysterious way, events, which is divorce. My kids were 4 and 1, and it gutted me. It just gutted me, man. Um, the loneliness and the failure of it, and the 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 need to be a father, but my inability to even be present with my kids. And that kind of tipped me over the edge where I just went deeper and deeper into a really dark place. And I think like with a lot of addicts who figure it out, and the reason why my addiction's so profound is if you overcome that and you regain control, because at this point, at the depths of my addiction, um, my kids didn't want anything to do with me. I was stuffing them in the car physically, and they're kicking and screaming because they don't want to have anything to do with me. I'm totally broke, like totally broke. I've got a handful of crappy cases that, very few lawyers would even want. Um, and but for a few breaks here and there, I very well could have just been forced to quit the practice of law and go get a job somewhere else where I can just pay the bills. So I am down and out. Physically, I was really affected by the substances, physical consequences from it, mentally, it like just weird, bizarre stuff. And so you reach this point where you're either going to live or die. You know what I mean? Like I was at a point where I'm either gonna live or I'm gonna die. And I remember the moment, I remember the moment where it flashed on me like an out of body experience. I was looking down on myself in a bar. My girlfriend's passed out on this big kind of high elevated table, and it was scary because she could fall off and hit her head or something. And I'm looking at my life and I'm saying, this is not who I want to be. And yeah, I'm sorry if this is going on too long, but
Oh, no, this is perfect. Yeah.
so I kind of scooped her up, and I'm at this point, I hate her, I hate me, I hate my life, and I drop her off at her condo, and I drive home, and there's this kind of exit off I-5. They were doing some construction on 16, this big massive bridge to get to another place, and there was a detour, and I fell asleep or passed out or just like whatever, and I jumped the curb. And this is on a highway interchange where the sharp turnaround is, if you keep going straight, you're going to hit other vehicles. And I get jolted to my, I get alert when I hit the curb, get control of the car, get it back on the road, and I make it home safely. And the next morning I woke up, and I still have it to this day. Um, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke weed. I'm going to live a healthy life. I'm going to work 9 to 5. I'm going to be there for my kids. And that I'm going to Wyoming, the ranch. We we met. No, we didn't meet. Yeah, but we spent some great times there at Jerry Spence's ranch. And at the airport, I'm drinking again, dude. The next day, I'm drinking. And you mentioned psychodrama earlier. And for those of you who don't know what psychodrama is group therapy, really. And it uses reenactment and role reversal and scene setting as powerful tools as the group to help you gain introspection of yourself. And the brilliance of Jerry Spence and his method is that he took those therapeutic tools to become an entertainer in court. And it's badass shit. Like, it's incredible trial tools for a trial lawyer to have. But psychodrama is a powerful therapeutic technique. And I was lucky enough to put myself out there and got picked for addictions. Imagine that, a psychodrama on addiction with a bunch of lawyers. Um, and I remember looking at that group, so I'm going to be the person who kicks this. When I say I'm going to quit, I'm going to quit. And then I do my drama. I immediately get into an AA group, and that was 9 years ago,
Hmm.
and it changed everything for me. It changed. I can't tell you the turnaround it had for me.
Hmm.
After about 90 days, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually smart. I can think. Like my brain was so dead. I couldn't formulate thoughts. It was astounding.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congrats. 9 years is no joke. That's and do you still do you
Thank
still,
you.
do you still go to the meetings and
No, I don't. I
okay,
stopped going a couple of years ago and missed the people in my group immensely. But
gotcha. Uh,
yeah,
gotcha. So bringing us back to being a solo, um, you know, a lot of people, it's one of the biggest leaps of faith that, talking
yeah,
about faith that we have to take when if you're at a secure, firm or def
yeah.
prosecutor, defense attorney, or a public defender, uh, taking that leap, how did you, either looking at this last time they went solo or the first time, how did you, yeah, how did you think about that as far as managing a business?
That is a really good question. Um, and it's hard for me to talk about my experience because it's not going to be yours or anyone else's. Um, you have to be, I've said confidence a number of times in this talk, right? But if you're making that decision, you have to have the belief in yourself and the confidence in yourself that you can do it. Because living insecure and unsure when you're taking such a big leap is, probably not the time to do it. And where's the confidence going to come from? It's going to come from your experience and, what's your network of potential referrals? How connected are you to the community? How connected are, when I say community, that could be way beyond, it is way beyond the legal community. Right? Do you have people that can send you cases? Uh, have you been doing it long enough so that your name is well known enough? Right? Because it's hard to get an internet presence these days as a solo practitioner when we're competing against national firms that are no joke, spending $1 million a month on internet advertising and marketing and billboards. And you're right, the competition for cases is it would be hard to crack and to be influential so that I think, I don't know, actually, I don't know if this is true or not, so I should be a little bit careful, but I would assume I don't market. I mean, it's word of mouth for me. um I used to spend quite a bit on marketing, um but I think that, when you're thinking about making that leap, what I have found, and I've had this discussion with a number of, because I talked to a lot of different lawyers, I have found that people are really grateful that they made the leap, and either they gain control of their life and who they are and what they want to be. There was something about their setting of where they were that they just couldn't take it anymore. I don't care about the money anymore. I care about my health, and I'm not going to compromise my time on this planet doing something I hate with people I don't respect. um and so it's complicated. I think that everyone's journey is so different and unique. And I don't know how to answer that question other than to say that if you have a dream and you have the confidence, go for it.
Hmm.
Because I think that we're oversensitized to fear and failure. We give it more life than we should. There should be more excitement to take a risk and to fail. The worst that could happen is you have to go get a job doing something you don't want until you get stable enough to go do something else.
Yeah. And when you did it, did you have like did you say, okay, I'm make the decision that you're doing going solo? Did you like save up, a certain amount of money to make sure that you could, pay the rent or did you
Right. Yeah.
do any of those types of
God, when both the times I've had I've left a firm twice to become a solo practitioner twice. Both times I'm pretty certain I was flat ass broke. I may not, the second time around, I may not have had any debt. And when I say broke, I mean, maybe it's a relative term. I mean, I had a house, had a car, like lived a pretty, I've always been successful. I've always been able to have clients and um, generate money, but I've never been over the top wealthy, right? So there was always insecurity of, I mean, the first time I did it, I got denied for a $25,000 line of credit.
Mm.
And I had to go to another bank and they gave me, $50,000.
Mm.
So like in 2000, the mid to say around 2014 or something, right? 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I was denied for a $25,000 loan,
Yeah.
right? So, and then I went out to be a solo practitioner, but I had connections and referral bases that allowed me to believe that I could, at least eat and pay my bills. And here's a key: the less you spend, the less you have to make.
Mm.
The less you spend, the less you have to make. And we live in a day and age where your own private jet is a thing.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like the type of car that you drive is a thing, and the kind of clothes and the watch you wear are things. And you get caught up in that stuff, man. It's very alluring to do that. It's intoxicating. It's you're around people that buy into that stuff, and you feel like they're judging you because you're not, right? It's complicated stuff. But what at the end of all of it, the less you spend, the less you have to make.
When we were talking about, juries, we talked about how we kind of reflect kind of who we are back to them, or we were
Yeah.
reflection of each other. Would you say, that
Yeah.
applies to starting a business, like kind of, leading with kind of your confidence, just kind of bringing that in to the way that you approach thinking about and starting as a solo?
Can ask the question again? You broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we talked about, we're all a reflection uh,
Yeah.
of each other. Would you say that applies to, is your business kind of a reflection of you?
Is your business a reflection of you? I think that's a little more complicated because I think that a lot of really talented people that the reflection of their soul would be just pure beauty are in a business that or in a practice that is not beautiful and not reflective of them, and in fact it's dragging them down. Other people, I would say absolutely. I don't think that's a yes or no answer to that question. I don't think there's an absolute. I think it's too variable.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then, talking about money, sometimes that's kind of like a taboo thing to talk, but as far as, how you thought about money, let's say, this last time that you started, when you first started your current practice, and how you think about it now, has anything changed? Is there anything you wish you would have done differently, starting out?
Well, no, I wouldn't do anything. I got really lucky. I was thrown into the courtroom where I fell in love with the jury trial. Got tons of experience. Like every week I was in trial. Like I was constantly doing jury trials. I learned how to talk to judges and witnesses and experts and cross-examination, give openings and closings. And I I am so indebted to my former partner, the guy who hired me, who's like, go try cases. I could have been hired into a firm where, we don't try cases. Um, and so my knee jerk reaction to the question is I wouldn't do anything differently. I'm sure I could look back on it and I could look at some of the people and the way I treated them. Maybe I'm not so proud of that. Maybe the way I am as a manager, as an owner of a firm, and the way I've dealt with some people that I was responsible to couldn't have been the best. But these are things that I don't want to be too hard on myself when looking back on these things because you're young and you make mistakes. And I love my journey. I can't, even my biggest failures, like looking back, yes, okay. Here's a unquestionably, I wish I would have been a more dedicated father.
Mm,
And I remember making a choice. Man, I remember making a choice. Do I do I focus on my, this is oversimplified, but pretty accurate. Do I focus on my career or do I focus on the family life? Are the kids going to be okay with their mom and I take the secondary role in this divorce, or do I focus on a career that will allow me to make money? And I made the choice to focus on the career.
mm,
It's kind of like selling your soul, man.
mm,
And the money that I've made, where I've been broke, and throughout my career, I've come into large sums of money, and then it's just gone and broke, and then you get money, and then you're broke. Um, the money the life that I've given myself, and the opportunities that come with being successful to help your kids is a form of parenting. So I can't even say I would do that differently because the opportunities my kids, I'm paying for their college. They are in college, right? That's because I busted my ass to make money. So it's there's just like it's so mysterious, and I just there's no even now talking through this, I can't say I would have done that differently.
when you started, either of your own practices, was there a point, like, as far as, the money that you were bringing in as a solo, where you made a certain amount of money, or accomplished a certain thing with cases, where you felt, like, I finally made my own practice succeed?
Um, so I'm in Kitsap County. When I started practicing law here, I think there were like 100 lawyers in the bar. And then I quickly became president of the bar. I got to know all the judges, did Rotary, did Chamber. I was a master networker. So I pretty early on established a healthy pipeline of cases from the community. And I was succeeding, right? I was doing well in court. And so I've always had money, but I've never kind of got over the edge where I didn't have to worry about money until relatively recently. Relatively recently. And I've had many, many 7 and 8 figure cases going back probably 15 years. But when it's all said and done, and overhead, lifestyle choices, taxes, that money just never seemed to last. And then I, got a very large verdict, a very large verdict that changed my life. Like what on the issues we're talking about now. Um, and and so I would say the quick answer to your question is that, having financial freedom and not having any stresses was predominantly a result of luck, but really great lawyering, with a big verdict.
Mm.
And that was 2021.
Hmm. Yep. I think I know. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big case.
Yeah. It's the largest. Yeah, it's the largest verdict in Washington State. Compensatory. There's been some punitive damages or class actions that have been much bigger, but for one person, one injury, just for that, it's the largest verdict ever.
Yeah.
And and I've always, yeah. So
Yeah.
look, you can look at lawyers that have made 1,000 times more than me. A guy by the name of Tom Giardi, billionaire who is in shame right now, going to prison. Michael Avenatti, you remember Stormy Daniels' lawyer. I could name a list of really famous lawyers that have made so much money, and they're just miserable, broke people.
Mm,
Yet they're flying in their private jets,
mm,
right? And so it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, it's it's the struggle of finding your internal balance and happiness that is disconnected from the ideas that we think we should be, or what we think we should be based on others' perceptions of us, or where I should be myself. And it's finding it within yourself to be satisfied with who you are. And that's, now we're going back to the stuff I was talking about earlier, which is, my work with, spiritual work. Oh, the spiritual work was critical. And that was hand in hand with my sobriety.
Mm. And you know, it sounds like, you mentioned finding that internal balance, right? I mean, uh, it it sounds like that's a daily. I mean, at least for me, it's a daily struggle.
Yeah.
Balancing, the amount of work with, with family and,
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's, what do they call when the sun has these bursts and it disrupts cell coverage?
solar flares.
A solar flare, right? I mean, we're gonna have our own solar flare where I mean, I was just a raving asshole to my wife just the other day. Like I wasn't, there was something inside of me that was stirred up and that we were doing together that, upset me, and I didn't handle it well. And she'll have her moments, and and it's, you move through those things, and anyway, I'm, yeah, my solar flares, but through it all, the ups and downs of staying steady, Pete Sampras played tennis for like 20 years, right? He was so consistent. He'd lose, he'd win, but he was consistent. So it's staying steady.
Hmm. And and then, so you've mentioned luck, but you've also mentioned a lot of hard work that you've done. And then
Yeah,
one of the things that you just mentioned that I didn't know was, being part of Rotary, being part of the bar president,
yeah.
networking. Did you do that? Have you done that all along, or is that something you did when you started?
Always, man. I've always done that. Right now I'm on the board of Public Justice, Western Trial Lawyers. I instruct the Jerry Spence method. Um, that I feel like there's something else, right? All along, I've tried to involve myself with organizations, things that allow me to be involved in the community and my profession.
Hmm. Would you say, has that been helpful as far as like building a practice? Like a solo practice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. There's even these business networks. I never did a business network, but I know lawyers that have, where there's a realtor, there's a lawyer, there's an accountant, and they have monthly luncheons, right? Those simple things like that can can propel a solo practitioner into this huge career. It's one relationship can change your life. One person can give you a case, or some cases, or referrals that will allow you to support a business. And you got to go out and seek it. You can't just wait for it to come to you.
Yeah. One question that I struggle with as as a solo, business owner, um, is, you know, looking, 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road, um, do I want to, build a practice that I can, that is marketable so I can sell it once I want to, walk away into the sunset, or do I want to, kind of mentor new attorneys under me? How do you think about that, in the long term?
I don't
Okay, yeah.
think about my present, my present ability. Mentoring is a lost uh necessity that I'm not sure we know how to do it anymore.
Mm,
Um, but mentoring should never end. We should never stop having a mentor, and we should never stop being mentors. And with respect to selling your practice or not, I mean, that's a little bit of a future trip for me right now, to be thinking, oh, in 10, 20 years from now, can that be a part of my retirement plan, or whatever, right? I, So I no, I don't. I I would say to you, don't worry about that stuff. It's except, do you need a mentor and could you be a mentor?
God. Well, I definitely consider you a mentor, and
Oh, thank
I
you,
mean,
man.
obviously, yeah,
Man, I wish I could be here more for you. I love like so you we were talking about seekers of knowledge and you're a good person, you're trying to do things for the right reason and you definitely are showing us a different way to do things. You're an original thinker, right? And those are powerful traits that um are being swallowed up by the hustle and bustle of the mass today.
mm,
So I'd say keep it up. And if I could do more to mentor you, um, call me anytime.
mm. Thank
Because
you.
I think it's critical. Yeah, I think it's critical that mentorship is a big deal.
Well, if you're asking, as far as if you can do more, just as a nudge, I really enjoyed the retreat you had, a couple years,
Yeah.
and I know, in the future we might do it again. But besides your retreat, and any other um like the top resources you would recommend to, you know, to attorneys in general, as far as uh, you know,
Well, for me,
conferences?
look, for me, everything I owed it to Jerry Spence. So the absolute single greatest experience I had professionally was going to the ranch, um, and being so the mind, right? We don't know, like the mind's unlimited in its possibilities, and we get kind of stuck in what we think we're supposed to do. And to be shown a way that is totally different, that broadened my horizon, and then encouraged to take risks and to fail and to be inspired by, charismatic, brilliant people. And you know what I'm talking about, right? It was life changing for me. And the overriding premise, from Jerry Spence is that it all begins with you, right? Everything in life begins with you. And until you figure that part out, you're no good to anyone else.
Mm,
And so as a lawyer, I would say go to the Jerry Spence method. And there's kind of a couple different groups that are doing that. There's the Trial Lawyers College, um, that is teaching the same stuff, right? So there's things available to people to go out and get that it would start. I would start with that reading. The first book I ever read was the Posner and Dodds. I think it's called The Science of Cross Examination. Brilliant book that I still use to this day. That some of the methods of how to cross examine. Um, there's self help books on how to eat. Um, Carnegie's book, Winning Friends and Influencing People. There's so many of these things that you could go out and find, which, um, man, a karma yoga retreat at the Bahamas, a Swami there that you eat super healthy food, you do yoga all day and chant, like mind blowing stuff there that I'm forever indebted to and need to go again real soon, right? Because I feel my soul and hungry for that stuff. Just go out and the oddest places you can find, be open to receiving a new message and let your mind grow,
mm,
right? That's what I'd say is go find something that makes you happy, that fulfills you, and is satisfying a quest for more knowledge. Because I think everybody wants to maximize the brain. What's really tragic in life are the people that have an existence that needs to be numbed. And I'm talking about victims of severe abuse, addicts, right? That have just their bodies don't allow them to regulate substances and chemically not stable. People that have just been lazy, that have never had to do anything and everything's been given to them, right? These people, and it's through no fault of any one of them, through their own. I don't not standing in judgment of anyone. And I've been in those categories, probably all of them. But to live your entire life and not go on a journey to grow would be a total disaster and waste. Total disaster.
Yeah, I'm glad you. I was gonna ask you. I've done. It's been too long now, but I've done a few of those yoga retreats, and it's one of some of the best decisions I've made.
I saw you light up when I mentioned that, so I know. And yoga, look, yoga and it's stretching. I think it's a form like my yoga. I use it in stretching, and I know you do too. I just, our body is our vessel, right? And we're only going to go as far as it takes us. And the irony of all of this stuff is we are so programmed for immediate satisfaction. You know, damned, I'll be damned if I'm going to worry about myself 10, 15 years down the line, even though I know what I'm doing now is going to kill me. It's killing me right now slowly. I'm just going to do it now anyways. And so, corporations are that way. Look at the immediate need to just succeed right now with complete disregard for the future, right? There's something about humanity that has the inability to use common sense and plan for the future. And so that's the struggle is what do I need to be doing now to preserve the future, as opposed to what can I do right now that is just good for me, that feels good.
Speaking of our jury system and keeping that alive, a lot of people are saying AI is gonna take our job. How do how do you think about that?
I've AI is, of course, the hot topic, and it should be. It's extraordinary. Um, AI will never take the job of a trial lawyer. You want job security, go learn how to try a case. And a robot, machine learning, large language model, any form of AI is never going to enter the courtroom and advocate on behalf of another human being. It's not going to happen. You want job security, go learn how to try a case. Now, the lawyers that are going to be out of a job and where AI is going to radically reallocate resources, shift people away from certain jobs, data processing, form stuff. I imagine contracts, bankruptcies, some of these things that are kind of rote and formulaic. Man, like look out. Paralegals, processing medical records and billing and that kind of stuff. I think AI is extraordinary. I love it. There's huge concern about it, and rightfully so. But I'm kind of more pragmatic, like it's here. So why would I be afraid of it or try to stop it or resist it when it's so dominant already? Like you better get with the program. That's what I got to say about AI. Yeah.
Which ones do you use?
Well, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of different tools and when it comes to just general knowledge, chat, GPT, but I've got I'm an advisory board member. I'm on a board of an AI company. I have free AI available to me to play around because the problem with lawyers and AI is that you got to be very careful with confidentiality, right? And so you can't load your client's files into OpenAI. You need it siloed and confidential, and so you have to pay quite a bit of money to do that. But even when you do that, there's things that AI that are extraordinary, but there's other things where it's just not even close to the capabilities of humans.
Yeah.
Mainly kind of complex reasoning and argument, frankly, and analysis, right? AI is not doing that yet. What it's doing is it'll analyze documents. It'll analyze timelines. It can compare, different documents and line them up of what they say, but it wouldn't be able to do abstract reasoning of what all these facts are and how they blend in with the law and how you could make different arguments and reason, right? It's not doing that yet, but it's reading language and it's analyzing that, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been really diving deep into just kind of trying to stay, you know,
Current.
informed. I use
Yeah.
ChatGPT quite a bit, and lately I've found Grok to be a little bit better. Have you tried Grok?
No, I have a tendency like Pandora or Spotify. I do one thing and I just can't leave it.
Got it, got
You,
it.
you know, like I just get sucked into habit, and until it doesn't meet my needs, I mean, so for those of you, I mean, crazy enough, like there's a lot of people that don't understand or have never used OpenAI. For those of you that have never used OpenAI, it's basically all the knowledge in the world, and it's called machine learning and large language model. And what they do is they train a computer through what they call neural networks. It's based on the mind of neural circuitry, and they line up all these computers to have greater power. By the way, AI is using almost 4% of the world's energy. Um, and they're training the artificial intelligence on the knowledge. And so they're feeding all these articles, and it's consumed all the knowledge in the world, by the way. Like they've run out of material to process, and it's ranked on its order of reliability, authenticity, its academic veracity of whether it's legitimate or not. But right now, let's say you have a trial and the issue is spondylolisthesis and spondylolysis, right? These are two really complicated medical, either traumatic injuries or congenital issues in the spine. Really complicated stuff for doctors and to parse out it. You could learn all of that stuff instantly by simply asking OpenAI, why is spondylolisthesis so complicated for doctors? What do I need to do with spondylolisthesis to determine if it's related to a traumatic injury? And it will lay out your whole case on that issue instantly. This is stuff that used to take me months, if not years, consulting, paying a lot of money, to my experts to tell me this stuff. It is extraordinary. Legal research, right? Those lawyers will be out of a job. AI right now is doing legal research like no human can instantly.
Yeah.
Now, would it write the brief and do the good legal arguments as it goes to the facts of your case? No, but it will get you all the stuff you need to do that.
Yeah.
And it will write it for you. It will, like these things will do your first draft and save you tens, dozens of hours. It won't get you to the finish line though.
Yeah. I agree. I think kind of the thing that it can't do yet, and I don't think will be able to do is um kind of having that that gut feeling type of you know just the human touch, right? Like the vibe.
That's it can't. That's what I'm calling reasoning. It can't do that. But it will. Like the horizon of AI becoming smarter than humans and being able to do that, they're working on it.
Yeah.
And
I think it'll be able to fake being human quite a bit, but like when you get it in in front of a when it's like face to face, there's more than just
oh, I agree wholeheartedly, right? Because it's using language. But look, all right. So game theory is a form of negotiating because there's zero sum where everybody, what you win, I lose. But then there's some negotiating where everybody wins. And AI, my brother-in-law is the leading authority of game theory AI in the world. He's a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and the dude's famous in the AI world. He's the one. So remember a couple decades ago, AI, which there's so AI has been around for so long in so many different forms. But do you remember Deep Blue, the computer that beat the top chess player in the world?
yep.
That's child's play because chess has finite movements. right? A bishop can only move on a black dot diagonally,
Yeah.
right? A pawn can only move 2 spots straight forward or one. Um, so that was pretty easy for a computer to do. My brother-in-law is the guy who created a computer that can beat the top Texas Hold'em players in the world, which is kind of what we're talking about right now, which is there's bluff, there's emotion, right? There's a combination of strategy and statistics, but there's also bluffing. So they're working on AI that will be able to do all the things that we're saying it can't right now. And it can't. The computers right now are not as smart as humans, but they will be. It's not long.
Do you think we'll get to the point where we'll go up against a robot attorney in front of a jury for closing argument?
No,
Why not?
because I if we are to the point where robots are able to tell human story to other humans, and that the humans are going to rely on a robot to make decisions on the future of society, then I think we've gone too far.
Mm.
Like I think all humanity at that point, robots will have taken us, which is the fear, right? That robots will be taking over humans. That's the dangers and the ethical problems that it could. And like science fiction movies have been telling this story for a long time, right? But that's the fear of where this will go. But if we're at that point where robots are deciding human justice, then we might as well have robots that are killing humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
You-
yeah.
It's not that they couldn't. It's
Yeah.
not that a robot couldn't get up there and eloquently, like the screenwriters, there was a strike, right? Like almost everything you read right now is written by AI. Yahoo, MSN, the websites, like you don't even know what you're reading and who wrote it, and chances are it was by a computer.
Yeah.
It's fact.
Yeah. Y- just talking about it out loud, I think as long as we can keep the jury, as long as we can make sure that they have a heartbeat, that they're not robots, um, I, I would,
Yeah,
I would be okay with, arguing against a robot attorney as long as the jurors are human, because I think
yeah.
at that point the jurors will still be able to, we can still connect at the human level, and then, you know, if yeah, so I think it would be
The reason why you can say that is because you represent people and causes that are righteous, right? You're not representing an insurance company that's advocating a lie to save money,
yep.
right? And so you can say that with a straight face. There's a lot of lawyers that could never do that because they don't believe, like what they're arguing is indefensible at the end of it. And they're using innuendo in the hopes that someone else will finish the thought.
Mm,
Good for you, because not every lawyer could say that statement, not honestly.
yeah. Well, I hope that's a long ways away, because I think as far as preparation, right, they'd be able to
Oh yeah,
know every detail about it, everything.
instantly.
Yeah.
But but you can use that for yourself to do that groundwork for you, you know. That's where AI for me, right? So I can load my depositions into AI and it can summarize all of them for me. It can tell me where people are inconsistent with one another. They have interactive programs where real time someone's giving testimony and it can cross-reference it with their prior depositions, the exhibits, the evidence. It can tell you where they're wrong.
Yep.
Now, for me to know, it's not that I can't do that stuff, but for me to know the record that well is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then I'll forget in the moment. You know what I mean? Like my attention span wouldn't allow me to retain all that knowledge. That's some pretty powerful stuff, though. That's available to us right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you tried case text or like any of the legal AIs, or like do you recommend any of them?
I don't. I I'm blessed enough to go to a lot of conferences. I was in Miami giving a talk a couple months ago. I'll be at San Diego, where there's thousands of lawyers showing up. And the booth, the vendor kind of area is stacked with all these displays, right? Big boards and kind of like the science fair where people have these big posters, you know what I mean? Like huge swag and posters of what they do, and it's all AI. And they have tons of talks dedicated to AI. And so I'll go and listen. I'm very curious about it, right? Because I told you that I have a personal interest in this stuff. Um, but what you're seeing, at least what I'm seeing, is it's all case management, it's all legal research, it's all data processing, right? Which we know it can do. AI is like the greatest at that stuff.
Yeah.
You get these mega firms that have thousands of lawyers and they have hundreds of thousands. I don't know, like Morgan and Morgan, right? I mean, I just got the verdict. It's some publication the law firm sends out, and they're talking about how humongous they are. I guarantee you, AI is managing their firm. AI is processing their medical records. It's processing their cases because it's just, that's what it can do better than humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And the only thing I would add, for as far as for the solo for us little guys, I think it's important that we keep up because it is going to change things. And there is ways to to run it, to just be knowledgeable about it and use it.
Yeah, I think for a solo practitioner, OpenAI is a no-brainer. You have to get comfortable with it and use it to learn and get going on this stuff. We do not need, I don't have any medical record AI stuff. I'm playing around on it, but I don't need it. Frankly, I don't really use it a lot because it's not helping me.
Yeah.
Right. So for the solo practitioners right now, I, short of if you're doing a ton of legal research and you're doing a lot of writing, maybe you want to get the Westlaw Lexis version of AI that does all that. But do you know that this is kind of embarrassing, but I've never paid for legal research, Westlaw or Lexis.
Hmm. No, that's good. I stopped paying for it a couple of months ago, actually.
You got Google Scholar, the bar gives one, and there's always one case that most recently decides the issue that whatever you're on, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like there's
Yeah.
going to be one seminal case that is the current authority on an issue. You can find that instantly on Google Scholar. That one case is going to contain every single case you need to know. If you read all of those and then you read the cases inside that, spend a couple hours quickly going through these cases and outline the cases, you don't need to be spending thousands of dollars to do this stuff. At least I don't.
Yeah.
And I find, by the way, that judges generally are going to make a gut level decision anyways that will allow them to interpret the law of how they want to make a ruling.
Yep.
And so the precision that we think we need to be a brilliant legal writer, I've never taken that route. But then again, that's not, again, I told you that I don't know how to do that stuff. So
Uh, I'm with you, man. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think OpenAI is a no-brainer. Just make sure you don't give it any private information. But I've tried some of the Westlaw ones, and they're good, but OpenAI is just as good, and it's $20 a month for the you know
yeah, or free.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, well, a couple more rapid fire questions before I let you go, and then I'll what I'll have you add whatever else any other topics that we want to touch on. But as thinking of a solo attorney or someone who's thinking about being a solo, what two or three books would you recommend that they read before they decide or go for it?
You know, how to win friends and influence people, the greatest salesman in the world. Um, and Jerry Spence's book, How to Argue and Win Every Time, is brilliant. If those three books should be just standard readings for every human being,
Mm,
every human being. Yeah.
Nice. That I couldn't have thought of better ones actually.
Have you read all three of those?
I have. Yeah.
The one I love the best, and I don't know why, is The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Oh,
It's maybe because it's like 60 pages and it's very easy to digest, but it's brilliant.
yeah.
When you go through the scrolls, the lessons in life that you live by, and just how the wisdom in that book is just I buy I at any given time I probably have 10, 20 copies of that in my office, and I would just give them to my clients. It meant so much to me. And it changed my life. Paul Revere recommended probably all three of those books to me. Paul Revere is he's a legendary lawyer, but beyond that, a legendary man. And he's one
Mm.
of my dearest friends. And he told me about that book. So I read it and it really, it changed everything for me.
Mm. I came up my first job, or actually my only job before being a lawyer, was selling kitchen knives, the kind of
Ah,
door to door kind of thing. And so being in sales, I pretty much memorized uh, how to win friends and the
yeah,
greatest salesman. Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
running, being a solo is you have to run. It's running a business. You have to,
But those books are geared towards living a life. You know
mm,
what I mean? Like they have the title of, and of course they're written by businessmen to succeed in the business world, but their greater lessons for me are just the wisdom of living a good life.
mm, totally.
Yeah.
Top two or three TV shows or TV series. Uh,
Ugh. Um, I'm not a big, I mean, I've gotten into the bad habit of watching Netflix just about every night. Um, I'm gonna pass on that one.
any either current movies or classic movies?
Let's all right. Let me try right now. A good movie. Yeah, pass.
Yeah, okay. No, that's
You couldn't even. You could ask. You could like other than like Harrison Ford. I got like the star. I have such vivid memories as a child and going to see Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Wars and sitting at home and watching Battlestar Galactica and even He-Man or the Smurfs, right? Um, I find that as I age, these things mean less and less to me, and the memories, the indelible memories they leave on me, are nothing compared to as a child and seeing the stuff for the first time, like hearing the introductory sound script or music, whatever, of Star Wars, and then the story of Once Upon a Time coming out, and just sitting in wonder of like, oh my God,
mm,
right? I don't get that anymore.
mm,
And I could watch a movie that's far greater than Star Wars, but I'm not going to remember it. And I think that might speak to the importance I'm putting on this stuff now. Like I just don't remember these things. I couldn't tell you the movie. Let's see. Last night, I think I started watching Den of Thieves
mm,
on
gotcha.
Netflix. Pretty cool beginning, but it's by and large, it's a movie I've seen before many times.
Got it. Got it. Uh, what's a current non-law related hobby or side hustle that you're currently
Well, for now and the foreseeable future and the past, it's always going to be fishing and gardening.
nice. Any good fishing stories lately?
Uh, I mean, the thing about fishing, I think that makes every fishing experience a good story is that for me, what I've realized is that I need nature and water to counter the chemicals that our bodies create when we're under stress,
Mm,
right? Like we live on the grid. We live in such a fast-paced, constant high alert, stress-induced environment with our job that every chance I get, and but this is science now. A walk in the park is the antidote to stress. Your body reacts physically to walking in a forest, right? Your body reacts physically to being under stress and deadlines and constantly having to do things. And it's super unhealthy. The health consequences is like reading the warning label of any prescription drug. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to be under constant stress. And so the greatest fishing story I have is the last one I went where I didn't catch a damn thing. But I sat on the bank of a river and I watched the water swirl behind a big boulder. And I thought to myself, how can I place this egg in the water so that it'll naturally drift behind it there into that deep well and swirl around in there so that a steelhead will want to snap it up?
It's awesome. Uh, that's
As
awesome.
as an eagle flew over my head, right? And the wind is whipping in my face, and it might be getting ready to rain a little, right? That's the greatest fishing story of all time.
Mm, mm. Man, well, that's a perfect picture to.
In fact, you want to go fishing?
Let's do it, man.
Anytime, man. In all seriousness, I love to fish, and you got some free time, let me know.
Heck yeah, man.
And yeah, yeah,
Next couple months, man, I'll definitely be taking you up on that.
yeah, you let me know.
Heck yeah.
Bring your van out there. I've got some property on the Bogoshiel, and you can sleep in your van, and I'll sleep in my camper and go hiking and fishing, and
Heck yeah, man. It's a deal.
yeah.
Heck yeah. Um, any last thoughts you want to leave folks with? Any last topics we should touch on?
I I don't know, man. I can't say that right. Yeah, I don't know. Unless you have something that
So yeah, no, the just the last thing is if you were talking to someone that that was thinking about starting their own law firm, that they're at a
yeah.
public defender's
Yeah.
office, 2 years under
You
the.
know, look, financial security, if you're making the decision to go out on your own, you're going to be almost certainly terrified of the financial consequences. How in the heck am I going to get cases? Where's the money going to come from? Do I have enough money saved up? How long can I last? Can I burn through this and still be okay down the road? And every person who has had to become a solo practitioner has had to wrestle with it. What I have found of having had this discussion with a lot of people is that the people who take the plunge and take the risk are happy they did it. As terrifying as it is, as uncertain as the future may seem, the risk and the payoff I have found, and for me, most certainly, has just been one of the greatest decisions I ever made. And I found that it's worked out for most people who do it.
Hmm.
And it it's also, I think, speaks to who we are, maybe. Like I can't fit in. I'd get fired in a firm at this point. I wouldn't be able to fit in and follow the rules. Um, People would hate me because I don't show up at 9 and leave at 7. And so I think people who are considering the life of a solo practitioner also beat to a different drum. And man, if you can find your rhythm and you can trust the beat, go for it.